It's episode 33v, the ER podcast. QuickBooks, it cost the State Department $657,000, and meanwhile, even greater costs remain hidden.
The ER podcast.
In our upfront summary, all across the country, many accounting teams and thousands of businesses run on QuickBooks, which lacks basic security features, creating an incredible risk for fraud and embezzlement. What's worse than that is the unseen costs of low technology software. I mean, QuickBooks is ultimately the more expensive choice than entry-level ERP software. We'll have details to follow. But QuickBooks cost the State Department $657,000. How much could QuickBooks be costing your company? Hi, I'm Gene Hammonds. I'm the founder and managing director of a consulting firm designed to help client companies select, implement, and ultimately see tremendous returns on software investments. Thus, our methodology, which we refer to as Profit from ERP. We've been replacing QuickBooks for 20 plus years. I mean, even back in the 1990s, QuickBooks was marketed as bookkeeping software for people who don't understand accounting. You understand accounting, right? Right. But still, it started out really simple, super cheap. Over the years, they've added a lot of features and expanded. But still, it's not really how you want to run a real business. For a mom and pop or a garage startup, it's great. It's fine. We've replaced it in hundreds of companies. And later in my career, I ended up working for larger and larger ERP software providers, ultimately reaching up to the tier 1 level ERP providers. And I collaborated with multi-million-dollar software projects on multinational corporations. It was pretty cool, very exciting. One thing I learned is that when major corporations are spending millions, they're carefully analyzing exactly where those proposed systems are going to benefit the company before they spend $1. And then they end up spending $5 million for software that represents $10 million in return on investment. Since 2013, I brought that same methodology to mid-market companies who don't have full-time financial analysts on staff nor ERP expertise. We put this all together in what we call the cost revenue model, and it shows all the avoided costs, enhanced revenue opportunities, combined with all the cash flows needed to do the software project. So you can project when the cost of software will pay for itself and then some. And that then some gets pretty exciting. Anyway, doing these cost revenue models finally showed me that it's not the low price of QuickBooks that's objectionable, but the long-term costs that really add up. Here's our story. QuickBooks cost the U.S. State Department $657,000. Fox News anchor Elizabeth McDonald, she's weekend anchor, she first broke the story that I saw about a U.S. State Department budget analyst who embezzled over $657,000 in a 2-year period. We confirmed the reporting with several other sources, even found the original document of a Department of Justice press release. Links to all that are below. And anyway, later, we even heard more reporting, and it seems that there are 60 different State Department divisions using QuickBooks to cut checks. And then the Federalist Radio Hour day before yesterday, Scott Walter, president of the Capital Research Center, said, quote, checks get cut and sent out of the Treasury that literally don't even say what they are for, unquote. And then he goes on, the State Department, if you ask them where every penny went, they could not tell you at gunpoint, unquote. So in today's episode, we talk about how some of this fraud happens, but more importantly, the inefficiencies that you run up against as well. So QuickBooks costing $657,000. And wait a minute, you're saying, hey, QuickBooks, I saw it at Costco for like $300 just a couple years ago. Well, that was probably more than a couple of years ago. But today, QuickBooks is mostly deployed online, cloud versions, and licensing prices about $120 a month per user or something like that. That's the price. But then there's the cost. And it's two different things when it comes to ERP. Price and cost, very different. We'll get into it. Details. Senior budget analyst Levita Ferrer pled guilty and admitted writing 63 checks to herself over a 2-year period from March 2022 to April 2024. The checks totaled $657,347.50. She did it because she had signature authority and standard access on the QuickBooks system, which means you can see everything, and she used it to issue State Department checks. Her particular MO was reported as writing a check to herself, depositing it in her account, and then going back into QuickBooks and changing the payee name on the check screen, deleting her name in the process, changing that to one of the State Department's regular vendors. And remember we said they don't even say what the checks are for? Well, QuickBooks has long been known for allowing users to simply edit information. It's regarded as a feature, making it very easy to use. You don't have to have adjusting entries. You just highlight, delete, revise, change the original record. There's no audit trail as to why you made those changes. You can go wild. And apparently Levita did. Standard ERP has user roles that allow just a user to see only the features they're assigned to their job role, allowing you to create segregation of duties so you can make sure this never happens. And then we learned there are over 2,000 QuickBooks instances in use across different federal departments. We later learned, I mentioned it before, 60 check writing departments in the State Department alone. That story emerged a couple of weeks later. Do you remember, you may have seen on TV after the State Department had a reduction in force. They let go or riffed 1,300 people out of an estimated 72,000 State Department employees. And I started paying attention because the first thing that came out was nobody knows exactly how many people work in the State Department, just that it's over 72,000. Wow. And later on in that coverage, it came out the State Department had 60 different departments cutting checks. Sounds like QuickBooks is everywhere. 7,200 employees, 72,000 employees, and not a CFO, controller, or accounting manager among all of them. Whatever it wasn't good financials practice. So why do so many businesses across the country use that same risky software? Well, the truth is millions, I guess, of small to mid-sized companies use QuickBooks because of the low purchase price, but they don't realize the true cost. And this isn't the first ER podcast to talk about this. We've got episodes going back to 2018, 2017, something like that. Here's a quick story. At different times in my technology career, the software division that I've worked for is merged with or been bought by a CPA firm, and I've ended up working with two different regional CPA firms. Because of forensic CPA work on court cases involving theft and embezzlement, every employee of every CPA firm involved had to sign off on a conflict of interest affidavit just to make sure that there were no connections or anything like that. And we saw QuickBooks cases coming across consistently. Now, of course, no business is going to publicize that their accounting team just lost, $657,000. So you don't hear a lot about it. But what happened at the State Department is not unheard of. And I get it. You know, the business world, it's crazy. You're running at breakneck speed with a growing company. It can be a rational decision to pick QuickBooks. It's easy, simple, dirt cheap. And ERP software can start at $50,000 to $75,000 for some of the entry packages. Part of the price, of course, is the implementation services with consultants, and they bill out at $250 an hour, $250 an hour. And that adds up even for a small, simple company. And I've talked to some really savvy CFOs, and they say all they need is QuickBooks and a few dozen spreadsheets or Power BI or other outside tools, and they can run a $50 million corporation in their sleep. And they're right. They can do it. They can make it work until it doesn't. But the truth is, if all you care about is the upfront cost, I've got a better idea for you. Just get a few dozen of these bookkeeping ledger books and a few cases of number 2 pencils. Much, much less expensive. But you're going to need more clerks and accountants, maybe 20 or 30 of them, right? It's the same thing with QuickBooks and spreadsheets versus ERP. You can go the cheap route with software and spreadsheets. It just requires more people and incurs additional labor costs. Here's 2 client companies. Both are $30 million in annual revenue. Both are fairly similar in their business complexity. The first one, a $30 million annual revenue company using NetSuite. They had the original 6 people in the accounting office who were there when they first implemented back when it was a $7 million company. Same 6 people. The company quadrupled without adding overhead labor expense. And they sold very complex AV gear, most of it run via servers and signal switchers, high electronics, but they knew exactly where they had each and every server deployed that they'd sold to customers in thousands of customers' facilities across the country. They could search by brand, configuration, warranty, expiration, or any other criterion. Hugely successful. The second company, also $30 million company, they were using QuickBooks. They had 13 people in the accounting office to manage the books and all the spreadsheets that they needed for reporting. And if you ask, well, they tell you their main problem was tracking equipment. They were in the business of leasing heavy equipment to oil and gas wells, and they had no idea where to find the millions of dollars in oil field machinery they had leased out over the years. No idea where any of it was. So, two $30 million companies. Now, in your head, do the math on 13 people in one accounting department versus 6 people in the other accounting department. There's your true cost of QuickBooks right there. About $500,000 in labor cost every year, a cost that if you had avoided it would pay for something simple like Intact ERP from the savings found in year one alone. But instead, you keep going on QuickBooks, 7 additional people, then 8 additional people. Year after year, it kind of starts to add up. Look, I understand it. ERP decisions are difficult. You don't know if it's going to work. There's unknown costs, unknown returns. Will it really work? That's what everybody wants to know. And when it comes to ERP, most people don't even know what they don't know. But hiring one more person, that's super easy. In a 50-person company, you've made that decision 50 times, right? 50 employees on staff. There's an HR process, a budget process, defined hiring requirements. You basically end up with as close to complete information as you can be expected to get. And you've got a framework to determine one candidate versus another. And then you've got a measurement to find out if these people are working in your organization properly as you intended. That's what our company does at Profit from ERP. We bring a framework in to manage the process of evaluating, selecting, and implementing ERP software. We come in and work together with your staff to define the unknowns. What's the current system costing you? What's the projected return of the new system? What are the probabilities that you're going to achieve those returns? What are the steps, the workflows, the measurements, the goals, the milestones, the markers? It's all about finding the right software that's going to work in your business. Look, trying to fit ERP into your environment just because somebody else uses it and recommends it, that recommendation is fine for their business, but it could be well useless because of things that you do differently in your business, and that leads to failure. So you need more than recommendations. You need a framework to measure these software packages against your specific workflow. I mean, are we reducing inventory? Are we launching a B2C e-commerce? Controlling costs, budgets, profitability of different countries, different currencies, product lines, departments? Are we trying to automate AP? Do we have to handle manufacturing or distribution or field services? Those could all be different ERPs for different client companies, even if you're in the same industry. And then there's the time crunch. You're a growing company. Do you have employees at your office with a lot of extra time on their hands? It doesn't happen, does it? Well, maybe it does at the State Department. But take a look at this chart. Take a look at the roles and the time requirements needed for the average. This is like a post-IPO sized company going into an ERP project. You may not even have all of those job titles on staff. That doesn't matter. You still have the demand to properly implement ERP, so it ends up working for you. So you've got to find that somewhere. And look at the budget column. Most companies have a 2-line budget plan when we talk to them. They've got one budget. Line 1 is about software licensing, those costs. And budget line 2 is the consulting services to implement the software on line 2. There's more to it than that. Did we mention that 80% of the ERP projects fail? That's an industry standard. And most of that failure can be tracked to budget overruns. And if you have an unrealistic budget going in, look, you may think, okay, we've got a $400,000 budget for ERP. If you're a smaller company, cut that number. And if you're larger, make it bigger. But you may think we got a $400K budget for ERP. And so we're going to start looking at systems that cost $200K for licensing and $200K for implementation services. That sounds great. Actually, you should probably be looking at $100K in software and $100K in services and plan for $150K for staff augmentation and specialty tech contractors to get everything up and running properly. It's like the difference between having a Porsche that really doesn't run or a Volkswagen humming on all cylinders. Which one is going to get you there faster? Now, I don't mean to say that your ERP should be a budget or a discount system. That's not what we're talking about. The point about it is there's a lot of other costs that go into it. Look, when you can define how a system will eliminate labor cost, eliminate error rates that are happening with manual data entry, and automate your processes to get greater clarity, granularity of reporting, and efficiency, you move from talking about the cost of software to talking about the return. And that's the mindset you need. Achieving returns. Now it's time to use those software demos instead of just looking at pretty pictures, trying to figure out and making them show you how closely it's going to fit your business and how it's going to help you achieve the returns that you're looking for. And with the help of some ERP experts such as ourselves, you'll get the security and risk avoidance you need and make sure that you end up with a system that achieves your goals. One last thing. One last thing. CFOs, when I talk about this embezzlement risk of running QuickBooks in a large organization, they'll say something like, yeah, Gene, maybe so, but you have to understand, we have some really good people. The folks in the State Department said the same thing about their people $657,000 ago. Well, look, we've talked a lot about QuickBooks. To be fair, it's kind of a shorthand for any low technology ERP situation. Like I mentioned before, the ERP industry has about an 80% failure rate, time to go live, budget overruns, not getting the expected features, not to mention the companies that outgrow a system that fit where they were 15 years ago and they don't even remember why they bought it. Any one of those creates a failure situation. 80% failure rate means that most of the businesses in the United States have sub-performing systems. It could be a 15-year-old implementation that ran over budget, so they didn't really completely install all the features, or software that was great 8 years ago and now it's a headache and it's hard to find consultants to come in and even make a slight change to the dollar sign on the invoices. And man, that's a big consulting bill for something so simple. Anyway, forget getting new complex reports. And is this going to be ready for AI? No way. We see that all the time. Here's the thing. If you think your ERP system is killing it, you know it. You're well aware of it. If you're wondering if your financial software is good enough, it probably isn't. And I'm not trying to make a snap judgment here. The point is, does it make sense having someone come in and analyze for you and deliver quantitative financial models showing you how things could be improved? It might. Well, back to our State Department. What could they have done differently with their QuickBooks systems? You know what? They just didn't have the ERP expertise on staff going in. And so don't make that mistake. In the meantime, do not hesitate to reach out. Companies of all sizes and industries and have different approaches when it comes to ERP. We've developed our methodology from about 450 different ERP projects and documenting the best practices of the best adopting companies. And our methodology isn't just a one-size-fits-all. It's what we've seen through all of these different experiences. And when it comes to new clients, we may work together for several months, or you may just need a referral to the right software vendor or partner or services team. We'll be glad to help out. Whether it's a week-long planning project or sitting in on status meetings for just a few weeks, we've been called in to help review pricing and help people negotiate. Whatever ERP means to you, make sure you get profit from ERP. A little or a lot, that's up to you. I'm Gene Hammonds, founder and managing director of Profit from ERP, wishing you a profitable day. But making sure it's a profitable day if you're one of our clients of Profit from ERP.